Welcome to Aims and Ideas. Subscribe now to get your news, information, and facts.
So, picture this. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, face to face in the stark, cold landscape of Alaska. And the one thing on the agenda? The brutal, ongoing war in Ukraine. Now, a summit like this, it could be a massive step towards peace, but could it actually deliver? Or is it all just for show? Let's get into what a meeting like this could really mean for all of us.
And just so you know, this explainer comes to you from the Aims and Ideas channel.
You know, the question hanging over this whole thing is just huge. Is this the start of a real breakthrough, something that could actually save lives? Or is it a negotiation that could end up betraying the very country at the heart of the conflict?
All right, so the stage was set in Anchorage, a critical high-stakes meeting with literally the entire world watching their every move. Okay, let's quickly break down the who, what, and where. You've got Trump and Putin. They're meeting in Alaska, kind of neutral ground, but still very strategic. The big why is trying to figure out an end to the war in Ukraine. And the stakes, well, they couldn't be higher. We're talking about the entire future of a sovereign nation hanging in the balance.
So let's start with the American side of things. After a meeting that lasted nearly 3 hours, President Trump came out projecting this image of major success, really leaning into his whole persona as the ultimate deal maker. Trump's public tone was just full of confidence. He kept saying they made substantial headway, and he even informally told reporters he'd rate the meeting a 10 out of 10. The message he was sending was crystal clear. We're making progress, and a deal is within reach.
Okay, so now let's flip to the other side of the table. President Putin's take on the meeting was, well, it was a lot different. Much more careful, much more strategic.
Listen to the wording here. It's so deliberate. He talks about the root causes. Now, while he did say the talks were constructive, that phrase, root causes, is a massive signal. It's code for Russia's long-held complaints, especially its opposition to NATO getting bigger. What that tells you is that no matter what was said in that room, Moscow's core demands probably haven't budged one bit.
And here you can see the two stories side by side. It's such a stark contrast, right? You've got Trump with his super optimistic, deal-focused story about a tremendous meeting, and then you have Putin with his strategic, cautious language, calling it ultimately useful, but making sure to bring up those root causes. Two leaders walking out of the same room with two completely different narratives.
But wait a minute. In all this talk between two of the world's biggest powers about a war, there was one crucial voice that wasn't in the room. And that, of course, brings us to the view from Kyiv. For Ukraine, this summit wasn't a reason to be hopeful. It was a source of deep, deep anxiety, watching decisions about their future being made for them, without them. I mean, Ukraine's worries are completely understandable. First off, the most obvious one, they didn't even have a seat at the table. There's this massive fear that some quick deal could be made that sacrifices their land, their sovereignty. And with zero transparency about what was actually agreed upon, their entire future is now hanging on these vague promises of progress from Trump and Putin. Now, it's super important that we zoom out for a second here, because this summit, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. The world's attention, and the leaders' attention, was being pulled in a million different directions by other huge crises happening at the exact same time. For instance, over in North America, a massive Air Canada strike had grounded flights everywhere. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a major economic mess that needed attention.
At the same time, a heartbreaking humanitarian crisis was unfolding in South Asia. Catastrophic floods were devastating the region, and the world was being called on to help.
And in the Middle East, the UN was sounding the alarm about Gaza, warning of a potential famine. That puts incredible pressure on international diplomacy and aid. So, after all the handshakes, all the press conferences, and the global spotlight, where does this actually leave us? What happens next? Well, when you boil it all down, the summit maybe, just maybe, cracked the door open for more talks. But that's it. There was no ceasefire announced, no real peace plan laid out. All we're left with are these fuzzy understandings. For Ukraine, and honestly, for the rest of us, the summit didn't bring any answers. It just brought a whole lot more uncertainty.
And that kind of leaves us with this one final heavy question. In a world with so many crises, when leaders try to put out one fire,
What gets sacrificed? What other problems get ignored? What really is the true price of peace?